This is Legacy Battle. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever you're listening on. Also hit that like button. I am Michael Adams, creator of Legacy Battle. My panelists tonight from the Gridiron Battle Zone, Brian King and Rollo Cawthon. From Ball State University, we got Paul Havicott. Our special guest tonight, we're joined by a former NHL WHA forward. He spent 11 years playing professionally, to include with the Pittsburgh Penguins, Toronto Maple Leafs. Over in the WHA, he was with Cincinnati, Indiana, New England, which later became the Hartford Whalers, of course, and briefly with the New York Rangers. He is ranked 27th all-time in goals per game, even leading the league in goals in 1980. Stuck between two guys named Eric Lindros and Connor McDavid, so that's a pretty nice list to be stuck between. So we got NHL All Star Blaine Stoughton here. Blaine, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure.
So this is going to be fun tonight. We are doing the top 5 Whalers forwards of all time. As always, we'll have our Q&A afterwards with Blaine about his career. And we're going to start out tonight with Ron Francis.
Ron Francis, who not only one of the best Hartford Whalers of all time, he's one of the best hockey players of all time. Drafted in 1981, played 23 seasons. He was drafted 4th overall by the Hartford Whalers. And that first season, he picked up 68 points in his first season. But over the course of his career with Hartford, he averaged 91 points per season. He also had 20-plus goals every season during his Whalers career. He was also kind of an Iron Man. He averaged 71 games per season. He played 5 seasons with 75-plus games where he played. And 3 times as a member of the Hartford Whalers, he led the league in games played. Fortunately for me, he was traded to the Pittsburgh in 1991 with Alp Samuelson and Grant Jennings, who would help the Penguins win their first Stanley Cup. He finished his career in Carolina, which we all know is moved from Hartford, to still be a productive member of the Carolina Hurricanes. He's first in Hartford Whaler point in games played. He's first in goals, assists, points, power play goals, and game-winning goals. He's also second in assists and points per game. He was selected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 2007. So he is obviously the greatest player with all the numbers, all the accolades, even as a player staying on the ice, being productive for a squad. Top Hartford Whaler of all time.
So, Blaine, I know he's going to be a gimme tonight for this list, of course. He's probably the GOAT of the Whalers franchise. But even being ranked, I want to say he is 4th or 5th all-time in NHL history scoring. He was a two-way player and a man who could win faceoffs. Ron Francis had the all-around game. Did you see any weakness when you seen him play? And is he underrated?
Definitely he's underrated, but back to that trade, it's probably the worst trade probably in the NHL, but definitely the Hartford Whalers. I mean, look at his career versus the two. I'm not disrespecting the 2 people we got from Pittsburgh, but just look at his career and the 2 what we got in return for him. That was disastrous. But yeah, they put him on my line. He got called up, I think after like 10 games or something. He was playing in Sault Ste. Marie, I think. And they put him at center with me. Very first practice he came to Hartford. So I could tell by his passing and just his vision that I never thought he'd be that good as he turned out to be. But I could definitely tell he had the skill to be a great player.
Definitely has the mind for the game, that's for sure. We see it now as GM over in Seattle, and he really built the Carolina Hurricanes as the GM there. All those young players they have now were basically, part of his drafting. So
absolutely
great hockey mind. All right, let's move on to Jeff Sanderson.
All right, Jeff Sanderson, left winger. He was with the Whalers from 1990-91 to the 1996-97 season, so basically 6 seasons. Second round pick 1990 for the Whalers. Sanders had an interesting beginning because he was one of very few NHL players to be from the Northwest Territories, and he was by far the most successful player from that very rugged and remote area in Canada. During his time in Hartford, he topped 40 goals twice and 30 goals 4 times. He was rather durable as well. Once he established himself as the regular starter, for a full season in 92-93. He missed only 3 starts over the next 5 seasons and played in all 82 in 3 of those years. In Whalers Hurricanes team history, Sanderson is 7th in goals, 10th in points, 7th in power play goals, 4th in hat tricks, and 6th in goals per game. Sanderson made a move south to Carolina with the team in 1997, but only played 40 games before moving on to several other clubs. But he's definitely one of the better players to ever put on that Whalers sweater.
So Blaine, like yourself, Sanderson was a sniper. He could hit the corners. Maybe the best shooter we're talking about tonight. Maybe other than you, that could be debated, of course. What are your thoughts on Sanderson? He was one of those players that had to make the move to Carolina, which I'm sure a lot of Hartford fans are still upset over that. But what are your thoughts on his shot and his playing ability?
Well, he was. I was gone when he came there, but I watched him on TV, and I think the first thing what stood out for me was he had good foot speed, and he could take it outside and beat the right hand D off the left wing. So, and he had a great shot. So that's the first thing I noticed when I first seen him play on TV.
And I'm representing his line mate tonight, so I want to jump right into Andrew Castles because Sanderson and Castles literally go hand in hand together.
Yeah.
Castles, he came to the Whalers in '91 from a trade from the Montreal Canadiens for a 2nd-round pick. I feel that was a pretty fair trade. He played till '97 out there in Hartford. He posted 350 points in only 438 games with the Whalers. So he's 3rd all-time in assists in Whalers history with 253, 4th in overtime goals, and he led the team in assists 5 consecutive seasons. So as I had mentioned, him and Jeff Sanderson were line mates. They formed a deadly combo. Sanderson, as I said earlier, could snipe it, and Anders was more of a playmaker. And for a good, 4 or 5 year period, they really kept the Whalers afloat in the standings. Their goaltending was not super strong during that time period. I know that they both had minuses during their career in their time in Hartford, but they didn't have a lot of support. They were going through some coaches too, and a lot was going on in Hartford that time, obviously with ownership. But I believe Andrew Castles is a great playmaker. I think of everyone we're talking about tonight, other than Ron Francis, I'm going to say Castles is probably the best passer. He saw the ice extremely well. Your thoughts on Andrew? I know he did not put the puck in the net a lot. I am aware of that, but a great setup man, and he could see the ice, like I said. So what are your thoughts on his style of game?
Well, once again, I never seen him play live, just on television, but I agree with you. And he was just one of those type of players that could dish the puck. And that's why his goal production was down. He was a pass first guy, and he looked for his wingers at every opportunity he could. And that was just the way he played the game. I mean, everybody's got a different skill level, and you use your best assets, right, to produce. And his best assets were distributing the puck in the offensive zone. And that's what he did. And that's what made his career. So, yeah, he's a great player.
Let's go on to current NHL coach for this franchise that became Carolina, and that's Pat Verbeek.
Okay, Pat, I don't know if he's got the goods to make the list, but solid 20-year career, 1999 Stanley Cup winner. Was called the Little Ball of Hate, which is a little nickname given him by Glenn Healy in '95 after fellow New York Rangers teammate Ray Ferraro was kind of tagged the Big Ball of Hate. But when I was researching Pat, one of the things I found about his career is in '85, he cut one of his thumbs off in an auger accident on the farm. And thanks to his father and brother, they saved his thumb. And after extensive rehabilitation, he returned to hockey. He didn't even miss any regular season games because of the injury. So that's true hockey right there. But I think, it's a big thumbs up to his career. But he played in the NHL for the Devils, Whalers, Rangers, Stars, and Red Wings. So Mike doesn't get mad at me. Let me talk about his Whalers career here. So after his '88-'89 season, Devils traded him to the Whalers. In his first season, he led the team in goal scoring. And in his second, he was named the MVP. So in 91, he made the All Star team for the first time. And in the following season as well, he was named the Whalers captain. So all in all, he gets 192, finishes with 192 goals with the Whalers, 211 assists for 403 points, ended up getting 522 career goals and 540 assists. So he was over 1,000 points for his career. And that's Pat Verbeek.
And I want to give Verbeek credit because I know that he was the second captain after Ron Francis. They gave it to Randy Ladecure. I think I'm saying his name wrong, and he only had it like a real short time period. And then Pat Verbeek had to take that pressure on of replacing Ron Francis. But Blaine, Verbeek, he wasn't a superstar, but if you had 3 or 4 guys like him on your team, you were in really good shape. This guy did a little bit of everything. He'd go into the corners. He put the puck in the net. He was a leader in the locker room. Obviously has a great hockey sense because he is a coach now. What are your thoughts on his game and, his style of play in particularly? I think that's kind of missing a lot from the NHL these days.
Yeah, actually, I got to know him off the ice. So we were good friends. And he's a very unique player, obviously. He could put the puck in the net. He's a team leader, but I'd call him a playoff player. Those are the kind of guys that win Stanley Cups. Maybe they're not that important during the 80-game schedule, but you need guys like that because, as you guys know, the game gets a lot tougher in the playoffs. And he is a quality playoff player. I'd have guys like him on my team for the playoffs. You have to have big skill guys for the 80-game schedule to qualify for the playoffs. But if you don't have the Pat Verbeeks on your team in the playoffs, you're not going to win.
Totally agree with that. And he is a fantastic coach. We see how well Carolina is doing now, and I think they have a great shot at the Cup here in the 2023 season. So we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, I think he was assistant GM in Tampa, wasn't he?
Yeah, for a little bit.
I think so. Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the other man who has the nickname that matches, and that's Ray Ferraro.
Ray Ferraro, Chicken Parm. For those that don't know the story of Ray Ferraro's nickname, Chicken Parm, look it up. It's quite hilarious. Drafted by Hartford, the 5th round, number 80 overall in 1984. Played 6.5 seasons with them through an 18-year career. He played 44 games in his first season, and he picked up the modest 27 points. But in the next season, he was a 30-goal scorer and scored in total 77 points with a plus-minus of 10. He also contributed 9 goals in 10 Stanley Cup playoff games that year. And one of the things that stands out to me, he was a pesky little guy. And he also would play 75-plus games in 4 of the next 5 seasons after his rookie year, before him being traded to the Islanders in the 90-91 season. 5 of his 6.5 seasons, he scored 20-plus goals with a career-high 41 and 88-89. He's 6th all-time in points, assists, power play goals, 7th in goals scored, game-winning goals. He's also the all-time leader in Hartford Whalers shooting percentage. Now, let me tell you about this. So in the 2018-2019 season, the high for shooting percentage was 11.2 by Nathan McKinnon. For his career, Ray Ferraro averaged 21.6 shooting percentage. That's ridiculous.
Wow. So, Blaine, another scrappy guy like Verbeek, another guy you want in the playoffs. I think part of his shooting percentage being so high is because he was the scrapper in front of the net who picked up a lot of the garbage. That helps that shooting percentage. But another guy you want on your team in the playoffs. Your thoughts on Ray Ferraro? Great commentator too.
Oh, great commentator. Love listening to him. The thing what's unique about him, I don't know exactly how much, but he looked like he only weighed like 165 or 170 pounds. And hockey was in the transition at that time. There's starting to be a lot bigger defensemen than when I played. It was so it was a lot tougher for a 160, 175 player to stay in the paint area and get the rebounds, dirty goals. But he just had for the sides he had great grit, and that's what stands out as far as I can see.
I know he was good with the Islanders, but Brian, are you like me? You remember him more with, or I know he was good with the Whalers, but I remember him more with the Islanders. Are you kind of the same as me?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of forgot he was with the Whalers, to be honest, because he was, definitely most known for what he did up in New York.
Yes, knocking out the big part of knocking out those Penguins and going for the three-peat in 92, 93 there. So
But yeah.
yeah. Well, let's move on to our next player. Let's see. That's going to be Sylvan Terjon.
Yeah, Sylvan Terjon, left winger, 6 seasons with the Whale, 83-84 to 88-89. He is the older brother of the great Pierre Turgeon. 1983, he was the 2nd overall pick in the entire NHL draft. Joined the Whalers immediately at the age of 19. Turgeon was a scoring machine right out of the gate, netting 40 goals in his rookie season. That led the team, and his 72 points was 3rd. He was 3rd place for the Calder Trophy, and probably in most seasons he would have won, but he was behind some guys named Tom Barrasso and Steve Yzerman, so kind of hard to beat those guys out. The next season he missed about a dozen and a half games, but he still put the puck in the net 31 times. In 85-86, that was definitely his finest season. He scored a career high 45 goals, registered a career high 79 points. The goal total was the 10th highest league wide. Unfortunately for him, an abdominal injury slowed him down and bothered him from that point on for the remainder of his career. And he was just never quite the same. That said, in his 6 seasons in Hartford, he averaged 0.89 points per game and about 1 goal for every 2 games. 0.48 is the actual rate, and it is 3rd in team history. So a solid score, an abbreviated career, but still made an impact for the Whale.
So Blaine, that was exactly what I had written down. What Brian just said: solid career, but under the radar. Was he under the radar because it was done in Hartford his best years, or what are your thoughts on Sylvain?
Oh, actually, I was still there when he came here, so I got to play with him. And great natural talent. He's just God-given. He's smooth, no effort skating. He's like I remember a guy by Paul Lawless, right? I mean, I just hate get behind those guys in drills, right? Because I'm working as hard as I can, and it seems like they're just floating on the ice. And he was just a tremendous skater, had a good shot, and I think he had. His career got cut short, I think, with the injuries he had. So I think he would have been his stats would have been doubled if he wouldn't have been injury free.
We can add him to our what if list, Brian.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Kevin Dineen.
Yeah.
So 3rd round draft pick by the Hartford Whalers in 1982. He didn't come up until 1984, though, and he stayed there from 84 to 92. And then he was brought back later on, 95 to 97. Another guy who had to go and make that move to Carolina. But he did get those 2 more seasons in there with the franchise. So I think Kevin Dineen's probably another give me tonight, but we'll obviously see how the vote goes here. But he is 2nd all-time in points for the Whalers at 503. 2nd all-time in penalty minutes, 1,237 penalty minutes. 3rd in power play goals, 4th in shots, in shorthanded goals, and 2nd in game winners. So, just with those stats alone, he's going to be top 5. Even, and this isn't the most impressive stat, but his time with Hartford, he is on the plus minus. He's a minus 17, and I know that sounds bad, but that is actually 2nd best tonight of all the players we're talking about, minus 17. So scored his final goal. He scored the final goal in Whalers history, and that was a 2-1 win over Tampa. So Blaine, your thoughts on Kevin Dineen, another player who played hard and wore the C there for a while. I know he had some good years in Philly as well, but what are your thoughts on Kevin Dineen?
I think he's kind of in the Pat Verbeek mold. Except he had a little more scoring power than Pat, but grind, worked the corners, good playoff guy. One of the guys you have to have in the playoffs, but he had, I think, a little more skill than Pat. And so he contribute in the 80-game schedule. But it's guys like him. I hate to repeat myself, but he is a playoff player. That's what I recognize in his career.
He had the size too. Like he was a big boy, bigger than Verbeek and Ferraro. So that always helped out.
And he was a team leader too. I actually got to know him off the ice. So real team leader kind of a guy, great character. Just love to play with him.
Excellent. Well, let's move on to our final player tonight. And if you can't figure out who that is, then you're not paying attention. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, this is a smart pick right here. This is who Blaine's going to probably vote for. His name's actually Blaine, but right winger, played 9 seasons in the NHL for the Pens, Maple Leafs, Whalers, and Rangers. Great shooter, great poise. He's a Whaler through and through, even dating back to when they were called the New England Whalers. But he had great careers in both the NHL and WHA. Total goals for the NHL was 449 points with 258 goals, 191 assists. In the WHA, at 89 goals and 90 assists for 179. Blaine, you were playing for the WHA for the Indianapolis Racers when the Racers folded in 78. You got signed by the aforementioned New England Whalers. Played third line with Mike Rogers, scoring 19 goals, and specifically with the Whalers in the 78-79 season. I guess a brief history real quick with that is that the Whalers moved to Hartford in 74 and joined the NHL in the NHL WHA merger in 79. But for the Whalers, he had 228 goals, 161 assists for a point total of 389. He scored at least 50 goals in a season in the NHL twice and at least 40 goals 4 times. Tied for the league lead with 56 in the 79-80 season. Got a good amount of awards too. WCHL All Star Team 72, scoring leader 72, NHL goal scoring leader in 80, and 82 NHL All Star game. Anybody? And one of my questions for you, maybe you can address this as you're voting for yourself, but I showed you here as playing your team with Rick Dudley and Rich DeLuke on the LSD line. I gotta know, what is the LSD line, and is that as fun as it sounds? But anyway, that's Blaine. I think he's going to be the winner here. Let's see what our other Blaine says about it.
So, Blaine, go ahead. You can answer Paul's question. Tell us about that LSD line. I actually had it on my question for the Q&A later.
Yeah. Leduc, Stoughton, and Dudley. Yeah, LSD. Yeah. It was funny.
That's not what I thought.
I played on another line. We were called the Bunny line in Cincinnati. All 3 of us were dating Playboy bunnies. So we
that's
were
a better line.
Oh, there you go.
We were the Bunny line. It was me, Peter Marsh, and Greg Carroll.
So it's always hard to ask somebody about themselves, but just tell us about your thoughts of playing for the Hartford organization.
Yeah. Well, I was in Indianapolis, obviously, and I played with Gretzky there for about 12 games before he went to Edmonton. But they folded. I went there. I had played in the NHL before, so I had, I guess, more experience than some of the other guys that never played in the NHL before. So I was expecting to do well. I never dreamed I'd lead the league in goals, but I worked hard in the summertime because I knew it'll be a little tougher playing in the NHL. The WHA was like a more of a wide open league. The defensive structure wasn't that good. So I worked hard in the summertime, and just everything fell into place. But when I scored the 56 goals, and I thought maybe I was hoping to score 35, maybe 40. But our power play, Ronnie Francis. No, Ronnie wasn't there. I played with Mike Rogers. We played in the power play, and with Mark Howe in defense. So everything just kind of fell into place. I was very fortunate.
All right, well, let's move into our vote tonight. cannot pick your own. We're all going to pick one. Paul, you're in my upper corner. Start us out.
I'm going to go ahead and get Ron Francis out of the way here.
Okay. Rollo?
Yeah, we're gonna add Kevin Dineen.
Okay. I'm going to take Blaine. I feel you lead the NHL in goals, and you score 50 goals and 40-plus goals as many times as he did. You got to make this list. Brian?
Man, he put the pressure on me. I'm looking at three guys here. Castles, Verbeek, and Ferraro are like all sort of in that same mold, I guess. And like Blaine said, guys you want around in the playoffs. To me, I think Verbeek is the guy that stands out. He's going to be the guy I'm going to go with on this one.
Okay. So, Blaine, we come to you. You've got a choice of Jeff Sanderson, Ray Ferraro, Andrew Castles, and Sylvan Terjon.
I'll take Ferraro.
Ferraro. All right, there we go. So, Legacy Battles, top 5 Hartford Whalers offensive forwards of all time: Ron Francis, Kevin Dineen, Pat Verbeek, Ray Ferraro, and the great Blaine Stoughton. Let's move into our Q&A for Blaine about his career. Looking at it, Paul, you got 2. Rollo, you got 2. So we'll go Paul, Rollo, Brian, me.
Okay, I guess a question I like to ask a lot of athletes is, when you played hockey versus hockey now, are there changes to hockey? I guess on the positive and negative side, like what's a change, if you could give us an example each one? Something you think made the sport better, something you think made the sport a little bit worse?
Well, I don't think anything stands out in my mind that it's gotten worse. It's got nothing but better.
Good.
But I think from my era and today's era, and we can talk about equipment and food and all that kind of stuff, but I just think the philosophy of the players has changed. We were hockey players when I played. These guys are athletes now. And there's a big difference between just being a hockey player and an athlete. When our season was over, equipment goes away, golf clubs come out, and you don't do anything till August. These guys train year-round. They eat right. They sleep right. And it shows on the ice. There's bigger, stronger, faster. And I could actually quit watching hockey there for a while when they're using the trap. The New Jersey Devils were winning the Stanley Cup. I think they won the Stanley Cup one year. In the third period, they had like 5 shots on net and won the Stanley Cup. So I didn't watch hockey back then. So they've revolutionized the game. And I think hockey's in a great place right now.
It's a 2-part question. So, 1, you dated a Playboy bunny. Did you get to go to the Playboy Mansion?
No. There's just a Playboy club in Cincinnati.
And then the 2 previous seasons before the Hartford Whalers moved to the NHL, you had the 2 previous seasons, you had 37 total goals. And then the next season you had 56, and then 196 over the course of the next 4 seasons. What changed for you? Was it the team or the guys you were playing with? Did the game slow down for you? What happened where that huge jump in goal production?
A huge part of it was actually, so I actually, the Playboy bunny I was dating, I married her. And we had our first child. So instead of going to bed at 2 a.m, I was going to bed at 9 o'clock at night and getting up at 12 and feeding the kid, and then 3 feeding the kid. So the biggest part is my lifestyle changed.
Right. Well, Blaine, in 79-80, as Michael mentioned, you led the NHL in scoring. But that season, you did not appear on the All Star team. Did you feel disrespected by that? And did that help to motivate you going forward?
Well, there's a lot of circumstance involved there. Did I feel I should have been in the team? Of course. You lead the league in goals, you're not in the All Star team. I don't think that's ever happened in the history of hockey before. But the game was in Detroit, and Gordie Howe was on our team. So what are you going to do? I'm going to get ticked off at Gordie Howe the greatest hockey player of all time right then. I'm going to walk up to Gordy and say, "Hey, Gordy, what's going on?" It was just, I was a victim of circumstances, and I was on the team the next year, so it all equaled up.
So I want to ask you about the World Hockey Association. We actually did a World Hockey Association debate with Andre Lacroix. So there were a lot of great players in there. Gordie Howe, we've already mentioned. Bobby Hall, your former LS D-line is in the hall, members in the Hall of Fame for WHA, Rich Leduc. So were you one of the players that went there because of the money? Because every player I've ever talked to said they left the NHL because they were getting offered more money in the WHA, or was that just like where you felt you could succeed the best?
No, it's like the Live tour. Of course, I went there for the money, but there's some other small issues. But so I was playing for the Leafs, and I was single, and the taxes were just ridiculous. So I got twice as much money, but my taxes went down 25%. And I bought a house, and you can write off your house payment. There was a lot of economical reasons other than just salary why I went there. But yeah, it wasn't playing time, or it was all about economics.
Okay. Same order, guys. One more each.
Yeah, so I want to expand on that a second, because that was one of my questions too. For somebody who hears a lot about the past WHA and the NHL, is that what are the major differences with that? Is it strictly financial, or were there other perks with each one, or were there, is it food and stuff like that? What would you say the biggest standout difference is besides the finances?
Are you talking about today's hockey, or?
Yeah, well, like when you had both successful careers in both WHL but did you particularly enjoy one more than the other one? Was the talent greater in one back then, or?
Well, there was less defensive struggle in the WHA, so the structure wasn't there. So it was the scoring was a lot higher than the NHL. So yes, I thought about that, because I think I scored like, I forget how many goals, 25 goals or something my last year in Toronto. But at the end of the day, it was all about economics for me. And I had no heart. I mean, Harold Ballard, I didn't get along with him, but that's not the reason I left.
Rollo.
Blaine, hockey today, who do you enjoy watching play? And who do you think plays a lot like you played back when you were in the heyday of your career?
I just like watching all the stars, the things they can do with the puck, the Detroit play and all those kind of moves. I really enjoy. At first, I was kind of skeptical about, them doing that, but that's the way the game is. It brings the fan base in. The young kids are trying it in practice. I got a granddaughter that plays, and I think the skill level and the way the game is structured now is just great for hockey. And as far as there isn't too many guys out there that play like I did. I was like strictly a goal scorer. I wasn't a great hitter. I wasn't a fighter. So today's hockey players, I think, are a little more rounded than I was. They got more attributes that they can bring to the game. I was kind of just a one skill kind of a guy. I mean, I was obviously good at it, but I think today's game, you have to have more than just the skills I had.
Blaine, you obviously had a ton of success with Hartford. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but you got the most average goals per game in Hartford, Carolina franchise history, which is very impressive. But in 1997, when you heard the news that the Whalers were relocating to Carolina, what were your immediate thoughts to that?
Well, I'd heard rumblings for like a year and a half that could be feasible. And the city of Hartford, right? There was a lot of things going on there. A lot of big companies were moving to the Carolinas, the big banks, the big insurance companies. And I just don't think they had the revenue stream from advertising that they could compete in the NHL. So I don't think it was the fans per se. It was just the business that couldn't support the NHL franchise anymore. So yeah, I kind of suspected something was going to happen.
A very unique arena too there in Hartford. Like it was like in a mall for a while.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we'll get you out of here with this tonight. I'm looking here at your Whalers career. Your first season coming back to the NHL specifically, 56 goals, 100 points. The next season, 43 goals, then 52 goals, 45 goals. You said earlier that the WHA was more wide open, but you were way more successful in a much harder league in the NHL. So just, tell me about some of those Hartford Whalers teams in the early 80s. And you guys had a lot of skill players. I know that the playoff success wasn't there as much, but just a very talented team going through the 80s and in what I guess now we consider the wide open NHL, if you could consider it that, compared to the WHA at that time. But so just your thoughts on that.
Yeah, we had a lot of skill up front. I would say, like any other team that doesn't contend for the playoffs, maybe our defensive core wasn't that great. I think our goaltending was all right. We had like Mark Howe in defense, but we were a little short after that. But I think that was our issues. But I enjoyed my time there. I had another child there, and I enjoyed playing Hartford. I was married, so I didn't need the big life that I did when I was younger. And so I got all fond memories of Hartford. I actually went to back there this summer. They have a get together every summer, and I was back there, and still have a lot of friends there. And that was great place for me to play at that time of my career.
Well, I know the Hartford Whaler fans are going to love this one once we get it up. And if you are a Whalers fan, please check out our prior episodes with Grant Jennings and Brian Prop. They both played for your Whalers, so check them out in the archives. We want to thank Blaine Stoughton for joining us tonight. Blaine, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. I love the Whalers. I miss those green jerseys so much. But I want to remind everybody, hit that subscribe and like button on whatever you're listening on. We want to thank you for watching, and we'll see you all next time. Have a great night.